This is Harmony, a Unitarian Universalist community. We are a lay-led congregation based in the northeast suburbs of Cincinnati, balancing faith and reason since 2009.
So today I will be talking about the Enneagram. One of the questions that human beings inevitably ask themselves at some point in their lifetime is, who am I? Philosophers such as Hippocrates, Freud, and Carl Jung have wrestled with this question and developed personality theories designed to answer this age-old question. Today I'm going to discuss a personality theory that has gained prominence over the past couple of decades that is called the Enneagram. The Enneagram is both a shape, as shown here, and a personality theory that maps out 9 distinct personality types and their interrelationships. This system also reveals the strategies used by each type to help us cope with our internal and external environments. Because the Enneagram focuses on motivation, it can explain how and why each type behaves in a certain way based on habitual patterns that each person has developed to protect themselves from internal and external threats. If you're willing to dig deep into this complex system, it can provide a shift in awareness about your fears, desires, and patterns of behavior that once revealed can lead to personal growth and compassion for others. Next slide, please. The 9 personalities of the Enneagram are numbered 1 through 9 and are assigned labels that provide a general description for each type. You may see different names listed for the types depending on the source, but the underlying traits of each will remain the same. If you're new to the Enneagram, there are important bits of information that you should know. 1, the types are not ranked in any particular order, and no one type is better than the other, unless you're a 5, which is superior than the others, which are equally inferior, which I'm just kidding, of course, I'm a 5. But they are applied equally to both men and women as well. Second, while everyone has all the personalities in them to some degree, there is one that is dominant and stays the same with you throughout your lifetime. 3, the description of your type will not fit you 100% of the time. Humans are complex creatures, and we will tend to act one way at our best and another at our worst. For example, you may know two people who are 1s, but they may behave differently if one is stressed and the one is healthy. And I'll talk more about this later. Now, the exact origins of the Enneagram are hard to trace, with some people noting that its beginning as far back as ancient Greece. The word Enneagram is made up of the Greek words ennea, meaning 9, and gramos, meaning figure, thus 9-sided figure. George Gurdjieff is largely credited with being the father of the Enneagram, who used it as a system of personal development in the early 1900s. Later in the 1950s, Oscar Ishazu created the modern Enneagram diagram seen here by combining the 9 personality types with the Enneagram symbol. Ishazu's teachings were later developed by psychologists Claudio Naranjo and others, who combined Ishazu's personality model with modern psychology, thus creating the modern Enneagram as we know it today. One thing that Ishazu did that I found interesting was that he linked the personalities to the 9 passions of ancient Greece, which are similar to the better known 7 deadly sins. Next slide, please. These sins represent the 9 ways that each type loses its center and becomes disoriented in their thinking, feeling, and doing. Also, while we all possess these sins in us, the one that aligns with your type will be the one that shows up in your life over and over again in times of stress. If you're using the Enneagram for self-improvement, you want to catch yourself when you're exhibiting signs of your sin before falling into a healthy state. Along with this sin, each type has a basic fear and desire. There's a belief of most practitioners of the Enneagram that we are born with a specific type, but our early childhood experiences also end up shaping our personality. In the book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, the authors describe the connection between nature versus nurture by stating, Our personalities draw upon the capacities of our inborn temperament to develop defenses and compensations for where we've been hurt in childhood. In order to survive whatever difficulties we encountered at the time, we've mastered a limited number of strategies, self-images, and behaviors that allow us to cope and survive in our early environments. It is the author's belief that each of us is born with a personality that is set in motion by basic fear, along with an unconscious childhood message that we've received as children by our parents or others close to us. Next slide, please. The fears of each type are universal, but each type has its own specific fear that motivates their behavior more than the others. This fear was developed in us as a response to a particular need that we had as infants that our parents or caregivers were unable to fulfill. The book gives the following example of how a basic fear develops. Imagine that a baby is expressing the feeling of joy, but the mother of the child is depressed, and as a result, feels uncomfortable with the child's happiness. The baby in response learns to suppress this joy in order to keep the mother from getting more upset. A different baby with another temperament might cry or act out in other ways in order to get the desired reaction from its mother. This range of behaviors then gets imprinted on the child's psyche and stays with them throughout adulthood. In order to compensate for one's basic fear, a basic desire arises for each type. Next slide, please. One's desire is what we pursue in order to make ourselves feel at peace and happy in the world. The problem is that we tend to pursue our desires in destructive ways that undermine our success in achieving our goal. This is what is meant by the distortions listed on the slide. For example, a type 3 personality, which is the achiever, has a desire to be valuable. However, if this desire is pursued recklessly, it can lead to one chasing success and accomplishments that will forever elude them. In addition to our fears and desires, our types are also influenced in part by the unconscious childhood messages that we've received from our parents. Next slide, please. Although you may have received many messages from your parents in childhood, the one for your type is the one that stands out and is central to your personality. As I find my unconscious childhood message is that it's not okay to be comfortable in the world. My best guess is that I may have received this message from my mother due to my father's death when I was a baby. And as a result, I've tended to be someone who looks toward the future for any perceived threats and safeguard myself against them. In response to the unconscious childhood message that we've received from our parents, there are lost childhood messages that we need to hear in order to feel safe. Next slide, please. The lost message often presents itself as the core issue for a child, along with their basic fear. As adults, our personalities do whatever it can to have others give us the lost message we never received in childhood. Thus, you can see how our personalities are formed to protect us from our childhood fears and push us towards our desires. Now that I've covered how our parents are responsible for creating the mess that we are as adults, I'm going to move on and discuss the Enneagram system in greater detail. One thing to know about the Enneagram is that it's a rather robust system with multiple layers that goes deeper than the 9 personality types. The first layer that I'm going to discuss is the wings. The wings are best described as a subtype for each personality that help you zero in on your type with greater accuracy. Each personality type has 2 wings, which are the numbers adjacent to each type. So as this slide shows, if you're a 9, your wings are 8 and 1. If you're a 1, your wings are 9 and 2, and so on and so forth. People are typically more influenced by one wing more than the other, though it's not uncommon to see aspects of yourself in each type. Next slide, please. Each wing has its own personality descriptor, just like the main types. A 9 with the 8 wing is labeled as the referee, and a 9 with a 1 wing is described as the dreamer. These two wings share the same basic traits, but their motivations may be different. For instance, 9s strive to seek peace and harmony in their environment, but a 9 with a 1 wing would be more likely to pursue these goals for moral reasons because morality is a core function of the 1 personality. On the other hand, a 9 with a 8 wing would likely seek peace and harmony with a sense of urgency and authority, which resembles a type 8 personality. The second layer of the Enneagram are the instinctual variants. These variants show our tendency to move toward one of 3 basic instincts: self-preservation, social interaction, or sexual, also known as one-to-one bonding. Like the 9 personality types, these instinctual variants are in us all, but one of the 3 will be predominant over the other 2. The variants indicate the particular area of life that each type is concerned with. Self-preservation types are mainly concerned with getting and maintaining physical safety and comfort, which means that they tend to worry about the basic necessities of life, such as food, money, shelter, and security. A self-preservation type, when healthy, will apply their energies toward maintaining their home, taking care of themselves mentally and physically, and making sure that their financial situation is in order. When unhealthy, those with this variant end up neglecting their appearance, environment, and engage in self-destructive behaviors. The second instinct is the sexual or one-to-one variant. In sexual types, the focus is mainly on connection with other people and or intense experiences. If you consider yourself an adrenaline junkie or approach romantic relationships with a lot of energy, this may be your instinctual variant. When healthy, sexual types typically have deep passions and aren't afraid to try new things. However, they have a tendency to become scatterbrained and have trouble with intimacy when in an unhealthy state. Last but not least is the social variant. Those in this group are driven by the desire to belong to and feel safe in a group while also seeking approval from those in the group. Participating in activities with others, whether it be in a family, organization, or communal group, is a high priority. Though ironically, it's not uncommon for social types to have problem with intimacy. When unhealthy, social types can be distrustful of others and become antisocial. Once you've discovered your main personality type, your wing, and your instinctual variant, you'll have a complete picture of your personality type. For instance, my full Enneagram personality type is a 5-wing 6 with a social variant. After digging this deep into the Enneagram, you should have a good idea what your fears, desires, and motivations are, which will then give you an idea of what steps to take towards personal growth. Beyond personality types, wings, and instinctual variants, there are other facets to the Enneagram, such as the triads and levels of development. So shown here, the triads represent 3 main issues and defenses of your personality. As you can see, the Enneagram is divided into 3 groups that correlate to the 3 basic components of the human psyche: instinct, feeling, and thinking. 8s, 9s, and 1s make up the instinctive triad and are also known as body types. Those of this group are mostly concerned with maintaining resistance to and controlling their environments. This means that they are attempting to use their will to affect the world without being affected by it. In addition to a defining characteristic, each triad also has an underlying feeling that dominates their personality. And in the case of the body types, this underlying feeling is rage or aggression. This anger can be focused inwardly towards the self or others. 8s are likely to put up emotional walls around themselves and lash out at those who threaten their sense of security. Unlike the 8s, 1s are worried about maintaining their internal boundaries, and as a result, strive to repress their feelings and emotions, So their anger is more so directed inward towards themselves rather than other people. 9s actively work to keep the outside world from affecting them, like AIDS. And at the same time, they try to keep their feelings and emotions in check, like 1s. As a result of this battle on two fronts, 9s are frequently emotionally and physically drained and are known to have the least amount of energy out of all the types. The next triad, made up of types 2, 3, and 4, is the feeling triad. Members of this group are known as the heart types and are focused on the development of their self-image and are attention seekers, though they go about getting it in different ways depending on their type. 2s look to get attention by helping others. 3s seek attention through their accomplishments, while 4s strive to be unique and stand out from the crowd. All 3 types typically have underlying issues with shame. By attempting to be valuable by means of their self-image, those in this triad hope to escape the feeling of shame in the following ways. 2s become do-gooders and try to become useful to others. 3s strive to be the best at whatever they can put their minds to. And 4s avoid their shame by being dramatic and playing the role of the victim. The thinking triad is composed of those of us who are a 5, 6, or 7 and are known as head types. Members of this triad tend to have issues with insecurity and anxiety. As a result, they tend to spend a lot of time preoccupied about the future and have problems staying conscious of the present moment. The underlying feeling for these types is fear. 5s tend to respond to fear by retreating from the world and minimizing their needs. 6s have a tendency to be anxious and overwhelmed by fears that are both real or perceived. 7s, on the other hand, charge headfirst out into the world, seemingly afraid of nothing. However, what they're doing is running from the feelings and emotions of their inner world and will seek to stay as busy as possible so that their internal fears will not bubble to the surface. Beyond the triads, the last piece of the Enneagram that I will go over are the levels of development. These levels were created by Don Riso in order to observe the changing nature of people within the personality types. This particular chart is generic, but there is one that exists for every type, which details the characteristics of each personality at every one of the 9 levels. As you can see, the chart is divided into 3 main parts: healthy, average, and unhealthy. By looking at the characteristics for your type at each level, you can use the chart to see where you fall at any given time. This chart also explains how 2 people of the same type, wing, and instinctual variant can act completely different. There are also other aspects in Enneagram that I could cover as well, such as the levels of integration and disintegration, but I'll leave that for you to dive into if you choose to on your own. In conclusion, you can see that the Enneagram is a very robust personality system that can be an effective tool for self-inquiry and improvement. One thing I would encourage you to do, if you have not done so, is to have your significant other, children, particularly if you're a teenager or older, as it's sometimes harder to type young children, or even other family members, have them take the test. Both my wife and son have taken it and it really helped me to understand and relate to them. Also, if you're interested in learning more about the Enneagram, I would recommend books by Don Riso and Russ Hudson, who are both instrumental in creating the modern Enneagram system, and whose book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, which is shown here, I highly recommend. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Harmony UU podcast. Check us out online at harmonyuu.org for more details. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Harmony UU. If you're in the Cincinnati area, please stop by one of our services on the first and third Sunday of each month at 10 a.m.